What's going on, my friend? I hope you're doing so mega fantastic. I'm Julie. Welcome to the Julie's Paint Party YouTube channel, where I believe that you can learn how to paint without breaking the bank. I just use really simple supplies from the dollar store to make beautiful paintings. And today we're just going to do a little quickie. So I have my little tiny 8x10 canvas board, and I'm thinking we're going to make some expressive kind of impressionistic avocados today. I personally love avocados. I eat them very, very often. Guacamole is my jam. Even just eating avocado with a little bit of salt on it, delicious. And I think they're just kind of like a cool fruit, and they have a lot of character, so I think it's going to be really fun just to kind of plop one down on the canvas. Now, reminder, if you absolutely love hanging out and painting with me, this is one of many tutorials I have. So I have a whole virtual hub. It's called the Julie's Paint Party Virtual Membership Hub. And I have well over 250 other tutorials of all different shapes and sizes, all different categories and levels and all sorts of stuff. So if this is something that you enjoy doing on the regular, I highly suggest go check out what's going on. It's an incredibly reasonable price. Go over to juliespaintparty.com/JPPVM. Julie's Paint Party Virtual Membership Hub. JPPVM. Wait, that doesn't mean membership, not hub. There's no hub in that. JPPVM. Okay? juliespaintparty.com/JPPVM. One more time. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, so grab a whole bunch of paints. Grab a whole bunch of brushes. We're going to get wild and do a bunch of crazy stuff. And I'll show you what I got going on behind my face here, okay? As usual, I have my holy trifecta of brushes. So I have my 3/4 inch Vita McFadderson flathead brush. I have my 1/2 inch flathead brush. And I have my nice long liner brush. Not really sure exactly which ones I'm going to use, but probably a little bit of each. I was like, okay, what color avocados? So avocados are green. They have this like light green middle, and sometimes they're a little darker around the edges, so I grabbed a dark green as well. Now, if you only have dark green, I'm thinking you could probably add a little white and yellow to make this limey leaf green here, if you don't have the two different greens. So if that's the case, grab some white and yellow. And I was thinking of really fun offset colors. Actually, I'm gonna grab some pink. So I have, just to make this a really fun painting, I have some red and pink for the background. I also have a little purple that I'm thinking could be a nice exterior color. And I have some brown because, yeah, avocados have a brown pit. I almost said nut, but it's a pit. And yeah, so that's a lot of colors today, but honestly, if you need to minus or subtract, if you don't have one, just we'll make it work. This is just going to be for fun. So grab up your supplies and let's get this party started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the avocado colors on my plate. So I got my light green, my dark green. I'm just like, they're just farting themselves onto my palette here. I'm going to put my white and yellow on my plate just in case I want to mix a little bit of that in. White and yellow. And then I got my brown here for my core. And you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to put all my background colors on here too. So I got my leftover pink. I got a little bit of red. And purple. Wow, that's a lot of colors on a plate. I'm not gonna lie. I don't usually like working with this many colors, but since we're working from home, maybe, you know, it's okay. And like I said, if you don't have all the colors, it's not a big deal. We can just work with what we got. Even if you have to make a light blue middle avocado, it's all about the techniques and it's all about just having fun anyways. So, avocados are shaped like eggs, kind of, right? So like we're gonna like kind of throw them down on our canvas. And I love it when some of my elements are kind of off the canvas a little bit. I feel like it just makes it really interesting and unique for the eye to look at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of like leave a little shaving of each side of my avocado off the palette or off my canvas for now. And I'm going to start with my light green. I'm just going to use my medium flathead brush right now, and I'm just going to loosely map it out, okay? So if the top of my avocado was like here, it kind of has this like little pop in the top and then a nice round bottom, right? And avocados are all different shapes and sizes. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small. Sometimes they're like really round. So that's going to be one side of my avocado. And then I'm going to put the other one kind of facing this way. And, you know, the like part of me that's like kind of particular feels like these avocados should be the exact same shape, but honestly, it doesn't matter. Maybe you cut one half a little shorter than the other half. Maybe it's not like a perfect symmetrical cut down the middle of my avocado, right? Right. And then we have the centers where our pits are going to be. So that's kind of like, I'm just mapping it out right now. Let's see here. Got kind of like a little pit shape right there. Yeah. Okay. I think that's pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a nice big scoop of this light green, and I'm going to start working it around my core here. You know what? I'm not even positive. You know what? We can put that on later. It's just like, it's too inhibiting. I don't like to be like held back by parameters that are unnecessary. So what I want to do is I want to have this bright green in the middle. And honestly, if it's not bright enough, you can always add a little bit of white in with it too. That kind of helps make it a little bit more opaque. And as I work my way out to the sides, I kind of want to add a little bit of a darker green to the outside. So I'm going to grab my dark green. So I wiped off my brush there. And I'm just going to kind of let these two colors mix together around the exterior of my avocado. So I'm going to go back and forth. I feel like I have a little too much paint, so I'm just wiping a little bit of it off there. I highly suggest shooshing if it makes you feel better. Shooshing makes my soul feel complete, so I shoosh a lot while I paint. Pretty good. Now we have like a avocado. Cool. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to grab my light green. I'm going to put a little white in there too. Get a nice little base. Wipe some of that off and grab a little bit of my dark green. And just start blending it in. So whenever we want to color or blend colors together, the more we go back and forth or round and round, the more the colors are going to come together. As long as your paint is still a little bit wet, it will be way easier to blend. And basically it's stamina. So I could leave it like that and it would be perfectly fine. But you know, I'm going to just finesse it out a little bit more. I want it to look like there's like a nice little gradient from the outside edge of my avocado towards the inside. So I just keep kind of wiping my brush around in that avocado shape. And voila, I got myself two sides of avocado. Perfect. Now I'm gonna let this dry. I'm not even going to touch it. I'm just going to let it dry for a minute. And while it's drying, I'm going to start to build the background. And I'm just going to get really crazy because like I kind of have this like retro vision for my background, which is pink and maybe a little red to like make some shadows and stuff. But I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm gonna grab a big scoop of pink with my big brush, and I'm just gonna start to like flap it on. And then I'm gonna take some white and I'm gonna mix it in. So I'm gonna have all sorts of like different kind of style brush strokes. Some are gonna be a little darker, some are gonna be a little lighter. And I'm gonna alternate, I'm gonna grab a little bit pink, and I'm gonna grab a little white. And I'm just gonna fill in all around my avocados. Now, just be a little bit more mindful around the actual edge of the avocado. So I'm gonna like follow around and try and not pick up too much green into my background, but that's okay if you do. And I don't really want it to look like I went around my avocado, so as soon as I get around that edge, you can really see that brush stroke that I went shh. I just take my brush and I move that around to make it look more sporadic, like I didn't follow along so closely to the edge of my avocado. There we go, nice. Avocado, when will you come to your senses? Okay. And honestly, I'm just having fun with it, and I want you to do the same. Now, whenever I'm making any kind of like kind of abstract, impressionistic background, every once in a while I'll have a couple diagonal strokes, but generally speaking, as I'm putting on, and this is just a stylistic thing for me, so I'm not expecting everybody to do this, but when I'm filling in backgrounds, I like to work in like a grid style. So even though I'm kind of going around the edges of my avocado here, I pull to the side and I pull down, pull to the side, pull down, pull to the side, pull down. And every once in a while I'll do like a couple little flappies, but generally speaking, I feel like it keeps some sort of organized chaos is what I'm thinking. So in the background, we have all these brush strokes, and every once in a while I'll do a couple little random ones, but generally I have a lot of up and down, so horizontal and vertical brush strokes. Ha ha ha. Okay. Well, that went pretty smoothly. And I'm pretty happy with the color placement. Now, if you want, you can always go back in. It's a little easier once it's dry to add stuff on top, but you can always get back in there if you want to grab a little pink and like darken up the edges. These are some things that we can do later on. But generally, I feel like pretty happy with the lights and darks of my avocado right now. With that said, I want it to look like there's a little bit of shadow underneath my avocado. So I'm going to take little bits of red and just kind of pop them right on the side, making it kind of look like it's behind. So I'm kind of pulling away from my avocado. So I'll start on my avocado and kind of pull away into the side and kind of add a few little shady spots underneath there. And you can use your smaller brush for this too. It's up to you. And because our paint is still wet, you have an opportunity to kind of fade it out a little bit. So if you have some harsh red, you can bring some of that pink and red together, and it will just gently kind of mix together with your pink and fade it out a little bit more so that it's not so harsh. But if you like that harsh look, that's fine too. We're just having fun. Now, if you do want it to fade out with some pink, it's better to not have so much red on your brush at the time. So I'll show you what I mean. So I have, you know, the red on my brush, and I'm kind of getting around these edges. Now I'll wipe it off, and just with like no paint on my brush, I can take little bits from that already wet pink paint and just gently pull them together. So I'm kind of just gently kind of wiping, kind of petting my brush so that those two colors mix together. And you can see there's that little fade out there. Now, none of this is the end all be all. We're just layering and adding texture into our painting right now. So if it's too much later, you can always take it down a notch. But for now, I think it's pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna leave that be. So my avocados should be pretty dry right now, but if you need it, just take an extra minute to fill in your background. You know, if you're not liking something very particular, I highly suggest just let it dry for a few minutes. Things are so much easier to fix and so much easier to cover after our paint has dried. So because we're using simple dollar store supplies, it dries up pretty quickly. Just give it a minute, and then we'll start to add more detail into our avocados. Nice work, friend. Now, I really want to get a nice dark edge around the outside of my avocado, but before I do that, I'm actually going to use a little bit of my white paint to map out now where my pit is going to live. So I'm going to just grab a little white and make my little pit shape. Now this is a pretty big avocado, so maybe the pit's a little bigger. Something like that. It's basically like an egg. There we go, there's one, and I'm trying to keep it, you know, relatively the same size over here. It's pretty good. Pretty close. Just there we go. Okay. Okay, so now we know where our pits are gonna live. Our stinky pits. So around the outside edge of the avocado, I want it to be a little bit more green, and we never really gave it a second coat at all. It's pretty straightforward right now. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get real impressionistic about this, and I'm grabbing my green. You can even like dive in a little bit, not too hard. I'm not pushing too hard, but like really kind of like load up with some green paint there. And I'm gonna just gently kind of pull this green around the outside edge of my avocado. And because this is such an impressionistic painting, it's okay if it's a little blocky. It does not have to be perfectly smooth. You can see I'm kind of going off the edge there, but I like that it gives it character. And it really gives a nice dark value to the outside edge of our avocado fruit. Yeah. Do that again over here. Awesome. Now, while that dries just for a minute, we can go ahead and work on the insides of our little avocado cores here. Now, one side's not going to have a core because when you peel or when you like break open an avocado, one side has the pit in it and one side doesn't. So we're going to work with the no pit side first. And I'm just going to grab, we're going to treat it a little bit like we already did with the outside avocado. And I'm just going to start with like a little bit of that light green in here and start mixing it in with that white that I've already put on there. So it's mixing in with the white. And what I want to do, I want it to be a little lighter around this top edge and I want it to be a little darker around the bottom edge. So I'm just taking that little bit of green, mixing it with the white that I put on there. And as I move over to this other side, I'm going to grab a little corner of dark green and I'm going to start to mix that in. So what I'm really going for is just like a little bit of shading towards that bottom edge. And I feel like it just gives it the illusion that it's an empty spot without really having to do much. Now I want it to be a little bit more defined. So I'm going to just pop a little bit more of that darker green around the edge here. And that's pretty much it. Now, we can always let it dry a little bit. If you want it to be a little bit darker later, that's okay. We can always add that little bit. And because we've learned from putting our green spot around our avocado that when we let our green dry and come back to it, it adds a nice darker tone after. So we have a little bit more opacity when we're doubling it up on our paint here. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to kind of do the same thing on the other side, except just using the brown. So I'm going to grab a little bit of brown and I'm going to mix it in with the white that's on there already. So I'm just making little paintbrush strokes because that helps just mix those two colors in together. And it keeps it nice and smooth. So my avocado is going to look a little on the light side. My pit is going to look a little on the light side at first. But we're going to add a little bit more shading to it in a second here. Just going to get that base color down. And I'm moving my paint around so that it's not all goopy and goobery. I don't want it to be super wet, so I'm kind of like wiping it around so it dries pretty quickly. And then I'm going to start to build on that foundation. So I'm going to grab this little corner. I have this like rogue piece of there. Oh, better. Rogue piece of bristle that's bugging me there. So around the outside edge here, starting on this edge, I'm going to start to just bring in a little bit more brown. And you know what? It's too wet, so I have to let it dry for a minute. So I have my base coat on both sides of my avocado, but generally now that, because my paint is still wet, I do have to wait, which is the worst. Waiting's the hardest part. Tom Petty was so right. Waiting is the hardest part. And that's it. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I can totally work on a little bit more detail around the outside edge. So to get a nice, real nice, deep kind of color around the outside of my avocado, and it's gonna like contrast and work so beautifully together, I'm actually gonna use some of my purple. Now, I don't feel like my purple is dark enough, so I'm actually gonna grab a little bit of brown and mix it in with my purple. So I'm just gonna have a little mixture of brown and purple. Now, if you have like a really deep dark purple, that might work a little better. So I'm going to grab that, and around the outside edge of my avocado, I'm just going to, I actually want it to be a little thicker than that. I'm going to just add a nice little shell. Just like I did with the green, only a little thinner. And just going to kind of let it sit there. So I'm not doing any mixing. A little bit might mix with the green, but that's okay. There we go. Little outside shell. Make this a little straighter. Now the reason why I'm kind of patting it on is because if I drag my brush around, it's just not going to show up the same way. So I'm really using that hard edge of my brush to just kind of stamp it on along the outside. So it's not necessarily elevated, but it is like a decent amount of paint on the outside edge here. There we go. Got a sweet red purpley edge around the outside of my avocado. And I'm going to wipe a little bit of that off, but it'd be cool to have a little bit of that purple shading on the outside too. So along with my red, I can take just a little bit of purple and kind of, you know, drag in a little bit. Drag in. Pull in. A little bit of purple around the edges. See how it just kind of darkens it up a little bit around that bottom side. Gives a little bit more shading down there. Yay! Okay, so hopefully my pit is a little bit more dry now, and I'm going to test it out. I'm going to grab a little bit of brown, and I'm just going to start to kind of, just like we've been doing, little taps, just kind of gently kind of bring it around that bottom edge of my avocado pit here. Give it a little dimension, you know, it's like not just a one-sided pit, it's not flat, it's round, so we got to make it look like it's a little bit more round, right? So it's going to be a little darker on the bottom edge or around the outside edges. And then as we kind of reach that center area, it lightens up a bit. So we can bring a little bit more white in there too if we want, just to brighten up the top of the pit. I fell in the pit. Okay. And a little bit more dark around that outside edge, and I think we're good to go there. Perfect. Now I can do the same with the green on the other side. Now that it's had some time to dry, if you want to just give it a little bit more dark around that bottom edge there. There we go. Just makes it show up a little bit better. Beautiful. Now for our final touches, we can do a couple things. First of all, I love to just add different highlights places. So, let's give our pits a little highlight. I'm just taking a little corner, little tiny corner of white with my brush there. And I'm going to give it a little highlight on my avocado pit. Just kind of shake it in that top corner. And just for funsies, I'm going to do the same over here. Right? It just sets it off. It's kind of nice. And I'll do the same in my avocado as well. So I'm going to give it a little wiggle of white up there. The same over here. Just a little scribble. Beauty. And whatever you want to do in the background that you feel like needs to be extra. So if you want to take some more pink and darken up some spots to give it a little bit more character in the background, or vice versa, you can always lighten up some areas too. This is kind of fun, just mixing the colors together, adding, subtracting, making it your own. You don't have to stick with pink. You could use any of the other colors in the background too if you want to. Do a little experimenting, right? Because that's fun. Just making tiny little brush strokes with my paintbrush. And voila, you got a couple of seriously vibin' avocados. And I hope that you had fun doing it. I'm personally gonna go make some guacamole. And maybe some tacos, and maybe a smoothie. I love putting a little avocado in my smoothie. Anyways, I hope you learned something. If you didn't learn anything, I hope you had fun. And I'm sending you tons of love. Have an amazing day, friend. I will see you soon. Bye.